We've all got our stories, our lies, our secrets. They say the truth will always out. Oh, I hope not. We have a job for a start. People call me a snoop. And they call me a lot worse.
And that's a clip from City of Tiny Lights. I'm delighted to say that Riz Ahmed, hit star, is with us on the show. Riz, how are you, sir?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks a lot for having me.
Well, it's very nice to have you on, and nice to have you with a slightly more... we have a few more minutes than I think we'd have got if we were doing the Star Wars presser, you know? So then you get
Right.
you have 5 minutes, go, and you think, oh, Star Wars questions, then that's it. But so you're back. I mean, you've done indie films most of your life, and we're back here with a British indie film. Tell us about this movie and your role as Tommy.
Well, City of Tiny Lights is an adaptation of Patrick Neat's novel. And Patrick is someone I've been aware of for a while. He runs one of London's kind of really cool kind of events. It's called Book Slam, where novelists come up and try new material with stand-up comedians. And so I was aware of his work, and I was aware of this novel. And when he and Pete Travis, the director, kind of sent it to me and said they'd like to adapt it, I mean, that was many, many moons ago. So it's kind of been a really long and winding road to get to this point. It feels almost quite surreal talking to you about it now, because it was a labor of love. You know, we thought there was something in there in that book that kind of captures a certain spirit of London and really, frankly, of any kind of British city, in the kind of the characters it portrays, you know, and the kind of layers and the different worlds that it kind of opens up. But it does so within the kind of classic tropes and structures of a private eye, you know, noir thriller. So we thought there was something exciting in that, and yeah, hopefully we've pulled it off.
Yeah, it sort of occurred to me after about 10, 15 minutes that I haven't seen a movie like this for ages. Which, as you say, there's some new areas to discuss, but it is a classical private detective movie, and you drink and smoke to an astonishing degree in the way the tradition dictates. But that, I don't know, what was it that made you think I'd like to be a private detective, or was it the other areas of the story that pulled you in?
I think it was a combination. You know, I think we've all grown up on those movies, and as you said, I think they were almost a bit more common, you know, in another era, weren't they? Or maybe they're just the ones that stand out because they do come along every now and again and define the times, whether it's Chinatown or whether it's, you know, Long Good Friday.
Yeah.
Or it's something you grow up with. So you kind of, as a kid, you're like, I want to be a superhero and I want to be a private detective. And so there is an element of kind of excitement, I think, for me as an actor to step into that classic mold that has been inhabited by other actors, but then also do something quite different with it and do something quite contemporary and quite British. I mean, that in itself, I think, was part of the appeal is that it's about contemporary Britain. And I think when I really started thinking about it, I wasn't sure how many British pieces of film or television get made that are set today, you know, that are contemporary, really, in that sense, or at least contemporary in a way that tallies up with my experience of contemporary Britain.
Tell us a little bit about the story, so your character is Tommy Akhtar. Tell us about the kind of detective that he is and the case that he's investigating here.
Well, Tommy Akhtar isn't a high-flying private eye. He's kind of just cobbling together a living.
Bit schlubby.
Yeah, a bit back alley, down and out kind of situation. You know, he's kind of looking for people's lost dogs and finding out if wives and husbands are being unfaithful. And one day, an escort comes in to his office named Melody, played by the amazing Kush Jumbo, and says, "My friend didn't come home last night. Will you dig around?" And when he does, it kind of opens him up into a world that is way beyond his pay grade, but also strangely leads him back to his own past. So yeah, that's kind of how we kind of end up dipping into lots of different worlds that weirdly overlap.
And some of the story could have been filmed 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, but it has a very contemporary edge to it as well. There is a swagger and a sarcasm to Tommy, which is very appealing, and you seem to inhabit it instantly. You know, we feel familiar and comfortable, and we like you straight away. And you've moved back in with your father because he's got prostate cancer. You know, so you're a tough private detective, but you've got a heart of gold.
Well, I think in a way that character is Patrick Neate. Tommy Akhtar,
really?
I would say, is Patrick Neate. If you meet Patrick, you'll see immediately what I mean. He is that kind of grumpy, sarcastic, charming guy with a heart of gold, buried away underneath that all. So that was quite easy. I met Patrick and I was like, okay, this is what's going on here. I guess, yeah, I mean, it's interesting you touch on that heart, because I think it is a film with a lot of heart. I think often when you get these kind of noirs, an out-and-out noir, there are kind of no good guys, or at least it's a world where, you know, the genre is about an amoral world, really. Transactional world. That's the kind of the vision
Except Tommy's a moral guy.
Exactly.
And certainly his father roots him in his history and certain values.
Exactly, and I think that's the interesting combination, again, why this film's kind of a bit of a hybrid. It's a classic noir, but it's a contemporary story. It's, you know, the noirish world of kind of questionable morals, but with a real sense of heart and actually quite a lot of warmth in it. It's kind of shot through with a sense of kind of adolescent nostalgia alongside the cold, harsh reality of, like, you know, back alley private detectiving today.
Yeah. It was. I thought it was hugely enjoyable, and the only bit that I went, oh really, was when the flashbacks, which go back to when Tommy is a teenager, the flashbacks go back to 1997, and I thought, oh, I really, really feel old now. This is like period drama. We're going back to 97. Just also explaining, Billie Piper is here as your kind of childhood sweetheart, your teenage heartthrob, really.
Yeah, I really enjoyed working with Billie. Yeah, it's as I said, the kind of story is about solving this case, but it's also about not just connecting up the dots of this case, but kind of thinking about what the missed connections have been in Tommy Akhtar's own life. And the kind of chief amongst those is his missed connection with Billie's character. And they were childhood sweethearts, and events led them to kind of drift, to sever ties, I would say. It was more dramatic than that. And so at the same time, it's a kind of love story in a family about friendship and family, as much as it's a film about what kind of city or society we're living in, you know.
And do you get much chance to film in London? I mean, you were born and brought up in London. Do you get much chance to actually make films in London? Or is most of your work still in the States?
No, it's interesting. The kind of really small films we'll make here are, you know, British independent films typically. And the really, really big ones, they all film in the studios that we have now in London. They all film in Shepperton, or they film in Pinewood. So really small and really big films are here. And it's those ones that kind of are in the middle, often don't film here. They're often in the States, or big TV projects. So I don't get to film here as often as I would like. And I think it's something that I'm really kind of passionate about, to be honest. Is kind of, it's great to work in the States. It's great to work all over the world. You know, I love the idea of having many adventures over the course of my career. But I really love to come home and work here and offer up fresh stories and kind of change people's perception about what we are about in this country. Because I think a lot of people still think it's all tea and crumpets. And it is that, but it's also other stuff.
I watched your interview on Stephen Colbert when you were on American TV. This was you were promoting, I think, a night of. But there's a line in there, in that interview, where you say that and I wrote it down just to mention, you said, you want people to know that this is what Britain looks like, and you're pointing at yourself, and that this is what Britain is what Idris Elba looks like. Is that the kind of thing that you're talking about, the adventure that you're on, and to change people?
And
it's
by
not
that, I don't mean
crumpet.
that Britain exclusively looks like people like me or Idris Elba. It's very clear that it doesn't. You know, people have very clear kind of examples of Britishness that don't resemble me or Idris, the royal family, or yourself, or, you know, whatever. And I think it's just more about kind of offering up a really broad vision of who we are and who we can be, that can allow us to all just like move forwards together. I feel like right now our kind of idea of who we are as a country is just maybe just a little bit narrower than it could be. And I think that can lead to people feeling a bit alienated, left out, can help foster divisions if people feel like they're not present in the national story. So that's certainly something that I'm passionate about, and it's not out of any sense of political agenda. It's just out of a sense of excitement. I feel like there's so many fresh stories out there that we haven't quite tapped into, and as a storyteller, I'm just excited to dive into those.
You've had an astonishing few years. I wonder, when you've done a Star Wars movie, it could be that every other movie that you work on for the rest of your life is smaller scale than that. I can't imagine that anything is bigger scale than that. But when you're doing a movie like this one, do you miss the time for rehearsal? Do you miss that time? Because you've said before about when you were doing Rogue One, being able to go in and do a line and then do it again and do it again and do it again and rehearse and change it, because that's the kind of person that you are. Presumably on this movie you haven't got the time for anything like that.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because on the bigger movies, the budget goes towards hiring studios, equipment, the crew, the special effects, the art department, the costumes, the 12 cameras. Whereas on smaller films, the budget can go towards rehearsing. So we actually had a week of just rehearsals, which were invaluable. And the reason that that's a sensible investment on a small film is you can't go back and reshoot stuff. So when the cameras are up and you're there with the crew, that's expensive. So you get 3 shots at it. You get 4 takes max, maybe, right? Whereas on the bigger films, you don't need to rehearse because they've got the budget to find that on the day, which is why they've also got the budget to continually rewrite the scripts. So it's actually a completely different process. When you're doing those tiny films, they need to decide up front if you're going to be sitting on a black chair or a blue chair weeks in advance, because then the art department can go to a charity shop and find the right blue chair, and you'll have to go to 3 to get the right one. Whereas on the day, on a Star Wars movie, they can go, hey guys, you know what? I don't think you should be married. I think you should be siblings. Let's rewrite this, we'll scrap this, we'll shoot something up, we'll come back next week. Yeah. So it's a completely different creative process. It's almost as different as doing theatre and film.
How much, now you've had a chance to sort of digest it all and see how it's all been received, how much has doing Star Wars and Jason Bourne together so quickly in the public perception changed your life?
I think it's really changed the awareness of my work in America. I think that's a kind of the biggest change it's made. And that's kind of opened up more opportunities for me to work in different kinds of films. In terms of how it's changed my life, it hasn't changed my life massively. I probably get recognized a little bit more, but I still get the tube everywhere. I still get the bus everywhere. I guess every now and again there are people turning up with like Star Wars posters that they want me to sign, and that's fine.
And you've written and directed before yourself. I just wondered whether that is an area that you'd like to increasingly move towards, getting your own. You know, if you're telling stories and want to tell different stories, take control and write your own and then direct your own.
Yeah, I would love to. I'd love to kind of explore that further, but I'm really aware that I've got a lot to learn, and more than anything, I'm aware of kind of how much time and focus that takes. And right now, I don't want to do that with a split focus, but you know what? If you're telling me to do it, then I will.
What do we see you in next, Riz, after City of Tiny Lights?
In terms of what's coming out, Girls is on right now on TV, on HBO and Sky Atlantic. So that was a brilliant experience. Lena Dunham is an absolute genius. I can't praise her highly enough. Yeah, I've really never seen anything like it. Someone writing, directing, producing and starring in something who's able to give you such amazing, kind, sensitive, nuanced direction between each take and improvise completely new lines herself from one take to the next. It's mind-blowing. And really, it's kind of seeing her work has made me think, yeah, maybe I need to up my game a little bit before I write and direct, and try and write the theme tune and sing the theme tune.
Riz, we appreciate your time. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.